The film begins with a cheerful couple, Paul and Iris, driving through the city. Iris is blindfolded, hinting at a surprise planned by Paul. Soon, it's revealed that he has reserved a table at the newly launched rooftop restaurant, Skyview. As the blindfold is removed, Iris lights up with joy and throws her arms around Paul, delighted by the surprise. They take the elevator up, but are told by a staff member that the building was completed 5 months ahead of schedule. This detail unsettles Iris, as she knows rushed construction often comes at the expense of safety. Still, they continue upward, and once at the top, Iris peers down and becomes visibly uneasy. She suffers from acrophobia. Paul instantly realizes his mistake and apologizes for bringing her to such a high place. Iris forces a smile to ease the mood and agrees to have a drink. As Paul heads off to grab drinks, Iris feels lightheaded and hurries to the restroom. Inside, a woman notices her discomfort and gently asks if she's pregnant. Though hesitant, Iris admits she's 2 weeks along but hasn't yet told Paul. The woman, who is revealed to be the restaurant's live singer, offers encouragement and shares that she has a child of her own. The reassurance helps Iris relax, and she decides to rejoin Paul on the dance floor. Paul leads Iris to the highest point of the restaurant, while a little boy nearby almost throws a coin off the edge for fun. A security guard stops him just in time. Paul then gets down on one knee and proposes to Iris. Overwhelmed, she reveals that she's pregnant. Paul is ecstatic, and she says yes. They embrace, and he slips the engagement ring onto her finger. Unseen to them, the little boy tosses the coin anyway. It ends up sliding into an air vent, where it jams the fan blades. No one notices, but from that moment, a chain reaction begins. But this is when things take a dark turn. A decorative piece falls from a chandelier and chips the glass floor, an important but unnoticed detail. As guests continue dancing, the crack worsens. Iris stops dancing suddenly, sensing something wrong. We see a montage, fire flaring in the kitchen, cocktails being poured, music playing, and the glass floor making ominous creaks. Suddenly, the floor shatters beneath the dancers. Several people fall instantly. Chaos erupts as guests scramble for safety. Paul ends up dangling from the fractured edge, gripping on for his life. Iris reaches for him but can't pull him up in time. He plummets to his death. Elsewhere, a woman's clothing catches fire from the kitchen blaze. She runs in terror, spreading the flames. The fire triggers a large explosion, wiping out many of the remaining guests. A lift operator urges everyone to use the stairs, and a crowd rushes toward the stairwell only for it to collapse mid-descent, killing many more. Realizing there's no other option, the lift operator opens the elevator. Guests pile in, but the excessive weight snaps the pulleys, sending the elevator plunging down and killing everyone inside. Half the tower collapses. Iris, horrified, watches the carnage. That's when she spots the young boy from earlier, alone and calling for help. Iris grabs his hand, and just as the remaining structure begins to crumble, she leaps and catches a steel beam. Now the two of them are dangling from a pillar. As the camera zooms in, it's revealed that they're hanging by a miracle. The engagement ring is caught between two nails. But the ring can't support both of them. The pressure rips through Iris's finger, and they fall together into the void. The scene abruptly shifts to a classroom, where a girl named Stephanie is jolted back to reality. It turns out she had been daydreaming the entire disaster scenario. Her teacher scolds her, and classmates glance at her awkwardly. Stephanie reveals she's been plagued by this recurring nightmare for months, unable to sleep peacefully. What makes the dream even more disturbing is that she recognizes the woman in it, her grandmother, Iris. Determined to uncover the meaning behind the vision, Stephanie visits her father, Marty, and her brother, Charlie. We learn that her mother, Darlene, abandoned the family during their childhood, and they blame Iris for it. Getting no helpful answers, Stephanie seeks out her maternal uncle. Charlie accompanies her. They meet their cousins Bobby, Eric, Julia, and their Uncle Howard and Aunt Brenda. When Iris's name comes up, the family grows tense. Howard reveals that Iris abandoned him and Darlene when they were just children, leaving them to suffer immense hardship. He also received eerie letters from Iris over the years, warning that death would eventually come for their children and listing patterns of how it chooses its targets. Trying to escape the grim fate outlined in the letters, Howard cut off all contact with Iris and moved to a different location. Despite everything, Stephanie remains resolute. Howard refuses to offer more information, but Brenda discreetly gives her the letters, which include Iris's current address. Stephanie visits the secluded home. It's heavily barricaded with steel doors and strange defenses. Clearly, Iris has been living in self-imposed exile. Inside, she finds her grandmother for the first time. The house is barren, stripped of technology or basic comforts, yet Iris has survived in it for 2 decades. Stephanie recounts her nightmares. Iris responds with a shocking revelation: the events in her dream almost happened 2 decades ago, but she prevented the catastrophe. In a flashback, we see Iris stop the boy from tossing the coin and interrupt the band's performance. She warns the crowd over the microphone to evacuate because the building is unsafe. Initially dismissed as a prank, panic breaks out when the floor begins to crack. Everyone flees, and the restaurant is shut down, preventing the deadly sequence of events. Iris explains that because she disrupted fate, death has been hunting down those who were supposed to die that day and even their children, since their existence defies death's design. That's why she lives in isolation. As long as she survives, so do her children and grandchildren. Death follows a strict order. Stephanie suspects that isolation has driven Iris mad. Disillusioned, she storms out of the cabin. Desperate to prove her point, Iris follows, stepping outside for the first time in 20 years. She hands Stephanie a book detailing how death operates and steps a few feet away. Then, fate strikes. A sudden gust knocks over a weather vane, which hits a fire extinguisher, launching a metal shard that pierces Iris's face. Blood spatters over Stephanie. At Iris's funeral, the entire family reunites, including Darlene. Meanwhile, Stephanie pores over the book, trying to decode death's patterns. Elsewhere, Bobby drops a beer bottle, unknowingly letting a shard of broken glass fall into the nearby ice, suggesting the death sequence may already be restarting. The family throws a lively celebration at their home, enjoying each other's company like a joyful, close-knit clan. But Stephanie is plagued by an ominous feeling and rushes to the house, as though something had forewarned her. Upon arriving, everything appears normal until a glass shard drops to the floor. Howard unknowingly steps on it, and at that same instant, a garden rake falls onto the switch of the lawnmower, turning it on. Just as Howard collapses from the pain of the cut, the lawnmower blades spin into motion and slice through his face, tearing it apart and killing him instantly. The gruesome scene leaves the entire family in shock and horror, while Stephanie becomes utterly convinced that everything written in her grandmother's book about death is true. She gathers the family and shares her terrifying realization: death is claiming them one by one, in precise order of age, just as it would have if Iris hadn't altered fate at the Skyview restaurant all those years ago. According to the order, Eric will be next, followed by Julia, Bobby, then Darlene, Stephanie, and finally, Charlie. But her warnings are met with ridicule, and her relatives dismiss her claims as delusion. Despite the skepticism, Stephanie and Charlie decide to shadow Eric in hopes of protecting him. But Eric, full of bravado, mocks their efforts. At one point, Stephanie notices a gardener nearby stirring up dust as he works, while a group of kids plays football close by. She predicts that the dust will get into one of the children's eyes, prompting them to accidentally kick the ball toward Eric. Eric ignores her warning and continues to joke around. Julia soon joins them, shares a few words, and then walks away beside a passing garbage truck. Suddenly, the gardener slips, sending a cloud of dust into the kids' eyes. One of them misfires the football, hitting Julia and knocking her into a garbage bin. Unaware of her presence, the truck's automatic system lifts the bin and dumps Julia into the trash compactor. The lid begins to close as Stephanie, Charlie, and Eric race toward the truck. Stephanie leaps onto it, trying desperately to rescue her cousin, but she's too late. The lid seals shut, crushing Julia inside. The horrifying death occurs right before their eyes. It's then revealed that Eric was adopted, and therefore not part of the death list's natural sequence. Julia was the true next target. This revelation causes the rest of the family to finally believe Stephanie. Bobby, terrified, begs her to save him next. Determined to break the chain, Stephanie dives deeper into Iris's notes and discovers mention of a man named JB who once encountered a survivor of death's design. She and the others decide to visit Hope River Hospital to find him. There, they meet JB, the very boy who had once been at the Skyview restaurant years ago. JB solemnly explains that they have 2 options: either die as fate intended or take another person's life, thereby inheriting their lifespan. Stephanie asks if anyone has ever successfully cheated death. JB recounts the story of a girl named Kimberly, who had technically died, only to be revived by doctors after her heart stopped beating. He warns, however, that tampering with death is extraordinarily risky. As a parting note, he advises them to live life as fully as possible before the inevitable catches up. In secret, Eric lures Bobby to a secluded hospital room and plots to force an allergic reaction by feeding him peanut butter cookies, knowing Bobby is highly allergic. While retrieving the cookies from a vending machine, Eric yanks at a jammed package, causing a loose spring to shoot out unnoticed. The two lock themselves in a dark room directly across from the emergency ward. Eric's plan is to let Bobby go into anaphylactic shock and then rush him into the ER for revival. He removes Bobby's EpiPen, promising to bring him back to life. Bobby reluctantly eats the cookie, triggering his allergic reaction. Meanwhile, unknown to them, a file drops onto a keyboard, accidentally activating the MRI machine in the room, bringing its strong magnetic field to life. As Bobby's condition worsens, the MRI begins pulling in metallic objects. Eric, covered in piercings, is suddenly dragged toward the machine, the metal being ripped from his body. The wheelchair he's holding pushes him into the machine, killing him in a horrifying fashion. Bobby, meanwhile, injects himself with the EpiPen, but just then, the spring from the vending machine is pulled toward the magnet and shoots into his head, killing him instantly. A nearby nurse stumbles upon the scene and screams, alerting the rest of the family to their location. But by the time they arrive, Bobby has already died. Eric, who tampered with Death's plan, paid the price just like the others. Darlene, desperate to protect her remaining children, chooses to retreat with them to Iris's fortified cabin, believing isolation might shield them from fate. They travel to the hidden refuge, but Death refuses to be outwitted. Upon arrival, Stephanie's seatbelt jams. She crashes through the cabin gates with the van, urging Charlie and Darlene to get inside quickly. Suddenly, a nearby electrical spark ignites a leaking gas pipe. Moments after they enter, the spark sets off an explosion that rocks the cabin. Darlene rescues Charlie, who is pinned under debris, and reassures him she'll do her best to survive. But fate is cruel. A falling beam crashes down on her, killing her on the spot. Charlie, devastated, doesn't have time to grieve. The blast has caused the van to flip into a nearby pond, with Stephanie trapped inside, drowning. Charlie rushes in, slashes her seatbelt with a knife, and drags her out, but she's already unconscious. Refusing to give up, Charlie performs CPR. Against all odds, Stephanie begins to breathe again. The siblings rejoice, believing they've finally beaten death by technically bringing her back from the brink. In the film's final moments, Charlie is preparing to take his girlfriend Jenny to prom. Meanwhile, an old woman nearby drops a coin eerily similar to the one from the Skyview restaurant that rolls down a flight of steps and wedges into a railroad track mechanism, preventing it from aligning correctly. Just then, Jenny's father, who's also a doctor, arrives and informs Charlie that Stephanie's heart never actually stopped. This means CPR didn't truly revive her in Death's eyes. The siblings are filled with dread. Before they can react, a train comes barreling down the misaligned track and derails. Logs from the train fly through the air like missiles. Charlie and Stephanie try to run, but the falling logs crush them, first Stephanie, then her brother. And just like that, Death fulfills its prophecy, leaving no one behind.